startup investing a game of skill or a game of chance?
Game of chance.
And I found that the best way to know a person is to try to find out their secrets.
I think I can smell money. I'm being honest. For example, if you look at what we are betting out in our company today, the extra dollars that we are running, the 100 million that you mentioned, 60-70% of that is actually going into betting into this. And as you know, one of my skills was to smell money.
Right.
And this is like really, it's stinking.
So how do you manage, for example, all of these opportunities that you are seeing outside, right? And then basically house them as, in-house kind of experiments and then run them. Does that distract you? Does that make you focused? How do you make that happen for yourself, given how much you manage?
At any point in time, the number of experiments or business units that we try to incubate, this is within the company, is somewhere between the 10 to 15 number, and that's a large number. Because this is what is in a 0 to 1 scale or less than 1 year old in terms of when having started up. There are in my opinion, there are about 5 rules to actually make that happen. The first thing that you should have is that you should have people who are not core to actually running your core business operations, running these units. Okay? There are ways to solve it, and hence the second rule is that those people cannot be from outside your company. So you cannot get a new guy to run a new business. Then there are 2 news. You have to make one old. So you can get an old guy from within the company to run a new business, or you can get a old business guy, meaning that guy has been exposed to this kind of a business but is new to the company. Obviously that doesn't exist because fundamentally that thing is new, right? So the second thing is that the person who is actually running these experiments has to be a graduate from your own ecosystem. The third thing is that you have to be patient. Okay? But that patient has to be around a timeline. In my opinion, that timeline is always a quarter post product launch or post service launch. The fourth is you have to be ruthless. Because fundamentally, if you are starting something up, you will get emotionally wedded to the idea of it continuing. And hence, you have to be ruthless after, like we set a quarter for ourselves. After that, we just stop. I mean, I go to the point of saying that, hey, if there are people who have to be let go, I am happy to actually pay them out of my own pocket rather than from the company's coffers in case there is an emotional attachment involved. So the fourth, you have to be like really, really ruthless. And fifth, and in my opinion that's the most, is that the ideas of new innovation should not come from you. Because frankly, most of my time is mostly spent in offices or in customer meetings. I generally don't spend as much time on the ground or on the street as I used to, let's say 5 years back or 10 years back or 15 years back. The people who are on the street are the ones who have real knowledge. You just have to make sure that you channelize them, you understand them, you infer them, and then you create the opportunity. And that's when the ideas will really fly. So in my opinion, we use these 5 to the fullest. We used to have a much longer laundry list of what these incubations would be, but I think we've filtered down to these 5.
That's very, very interesting to hear. I also want to kind of touch upon a very related topic here, right? Because when you do the kind of experiments that you do, there will be a large number of failures which will also come out of this.
Yeah, 80% fail.
But India mein itna zyada there is stigma of failure as well, right? Kabhi your maybe a star player takes the failure personally. It's a failure at an objective, but hamari tendency hai, to often take it ki yaar, I'm a failure. Do you face that, or have you managed to kind of coach your team out of that? How does that?
See, I don't fail, right? Those 10 guys fail.
Right.
So your question is, how do we manage that failure?
That, there can be accomplished guys, a guy who's good, but he takes the failure very personally. Right. But the guy is good, he can go somewhere else, or he can be attached to a different part of a business and still succeed.
Right.
But people tend to have that spotlight effect.
I think the notion that you will hear everywhere is that one notion that you will hear everywhere is that you should be celebrating failures. That's bullshit. ऐसा नहीं होता. Failure के बाद आप celebrate कर ही नहीं सकते. जो वो बोलता है वो झूठ बोल रहा है. So now to deal with failure, there are only 3 possible ways. One is a person retreats into a shell. Okay, if he's retreating into a shell, he has no place in your company. You should be ruthless enough to let him go, at least for the benefit of him, not if not for yourself, right? तो उसको let go करो. दूसरा बंदा क्या होता है, वो एकदम bounce back करना चाहता है. He's the guy who says that, you know, I've learned failures are the stepping stone to success. I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm going to correct it the next time around. That guy you need to back, because this guy will potentially run away and become an entrepreneur somewhere else. So you should, and I have a method of how to make it work. We'll come back to that in case you're interested. But that guy you need to really hold back. And that guy will always slip away from you because he knows that he had a failure at your place. Right? And then there is a third guy. Then the third guy is basically who will say that, hey, you know what? I had one failure. Now let me meander. The slack guy is down. The bounce back is top. And he says that I'll meander. That guy also you have to throw away. Frankly, what is happening is because we are changing as a society, that bounce back guy used to be like 5%. Probably today it's about 10%. Those guys are very rare. So you have to change the person. In 10% of the time only will the guy actually fit into your scheme of things the next time around. And most of the time he may run away. So you are left with a 95% attrition rate post failure, which is fine.
So I'll come back to that part, right? About retaining the guy who's failed, but you want to keep him around. How do you go about doing that?
When we graduate people, I'm giving a real answer, right? Yeah. So in my opinion, every entrepreneur needs to have some kind of very basic skills. One is sales, two is ability to think very practically and stuff like that, right? Very basic skills. It's a toolkit. Let's say आपको 10 चीजें जाननी है तभी आप entrepreneur बनाओगे. तो हम क्या करते हैं? In a very Machiavellian way, what we do is when we give an internal graduate to run these experiments, we make sure that he's not picked up all those 10 skills. He's probably 6 on 10, 7 on 10. तो fail कर जाएगा, हम बोलेंगे बाकी तो सीख के जा.
Right.
Internally, when we create an entrepreneur or a guy who's actually going to run an experiment within the company, we make sure that he is not fully an entrepreneur yet. Like he may not be exposed to capital raising. He may not be exposed to team building. He may not be exposed to technology building, which my good friend Vivek is very good at, right? So he may not be exposed to it, and hence he does not have appreciation of it. So हम वो 2-3 हमेशा छुपा के अपने पास रखते हैं ताकि जब वो भागे तो हम बोले ये तो सीख के चला जाएगा. इतना तूने मतलब you know in the hard colloquial way अब तूने 3 साल मराई, ये 3 तो लेके जा.
Right. How do you think about this? You in terms of यार ये बंदा I have to keep him around क्योंकि नहीं तो ये कहीं और जाके he's going to create wealth. So do you think about it from that perspective that I would rather have him?
Now I do. Because when we started, we were a team of 6 co-founders. My 6th co-founder, if you remember those 15 guys that we spoke about in the beginning. So the 6th co-founder was a guy by the name Srinath Ramakrishnan. He was a classic entrepreneur, right? He was the 6th guy in the company. He was classic entrepreneur, could do everything. I lost him after 1.5 years. He created a company called Zwork, right? So then I realized that one should not have all the skills within a company, right? They should have some, but not have others. And during the journey in the company, they should not learn everything because then you risk attrition.
Ashish, you're laughing about this and you're a very, very optimistic person.
Right.
But as a host of during this chat, right, I want to figure out that where was that chink in the armor? Were there times that you felt that your optimism was in your journey of building Ofbusiness, that your optimism was really, really tested to the core? Would love to hear
73 times, remember?
Your optimism,
you put it up.
Yeah. I thought it was 50 something.
50-ish.
So,
No, very many times. I'll be honest with you. I think in the first 3 years or so, till we actually stumbled on debt as the real source of capital which can be used for building an enterprise, we are highly leveraged today. We haven't raised too much capital, right? And we understood how to be the darlings of debt. Okay. I think we saw more dark days than colored ones.
What do you think that most Indians don't understand about leverage and debt that they should?
I think most people, there is a class of, I would say, old world Indians who actually think that debt is bad. कि ऋण लूँगा तो काम नहीं करूँगा, यार मेरे सर पे कफन चढ़ा दो लेकिन किसी का पैसा मत लो, ब्याज नहीं दूंगा. There's a huge communities who think so. The bigger problem is that anybody who's been an MBA here would know that leverage actually creates value because it doesn't take your company away. Corporate finance का पहला learning होता है कि leverage लो, As long as you can pay that, you're creating value for yourself because the company is not slipping away from you, because the only other option is to actually take nivesh or equity, right? So I think first of all, to understand that debt is an instrument that can actually be taken and made into a real, a USP for your success is something that most people miss out. You look at the biggest companies of India today, whether it is Reliance, whether it is Adani, whether it is Bajaj, they're all debt funded. They've not raised too much of equity. They've raised equity only when they get into hard times of not being able to pay the debt because they've raised too much debt. So first is this awareness that it creates a lot of value, that it can be a game changer. Not many of us actually think like that, because we've grown through the 70s and the 80s and the 60s when actually taking debt used to be considered a social taboo. Right? That's the first. Second of all, you have to understand that to pay debt, you need cash flows. You can't be operating with losses or heavy capital investments and all that. The only way you can service a debt is by actually giving money back. You cannot give promises back. In equity, you can give promises back. You can make a great sales story. You can actually go ahead and, say sorry, and people will tell you, hey, this guy is genuine. In debt, you tell sorry, you get bumped from behind. So the reality is you have to make your model such that it has to have cash flows to pay. And not many people think like that. Right? So those are two very basic things. There are other things obviously, but...
This very good point on cash flows, right? Because I think it was one of your podcasts with Avnish or somebody that I was seeing where Avnish was saying that revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash flow is reality. Right, yeah. So I think you guys are literally embodying his suggestions at this point.
No, I would have responded him to saying that the other two don't matter. Cash flow is vanity, sanity and reality.
So Ashish, आप debt raising करते हो, आप equity raise करते हो, you run experiments within your company. How do you balance all of this?
I don't balance.
You don't?
It's very tough to balance. See, frankly, if you are trying to balance, you won't end up balancing. I just do what is the need of the hour. Whatever stares up, see, when you are in business, how do you really operate? Because if you have 20 things to do, you just attend to the most urgent or the most important. Most important is what you have at the back of your head. Most urgent is what you see in the front of your face.
Right.
That's how I balance. I'm very poor in balancing it.
I'll reframe my question. Balancing in terms of your professional responsibilities with your personal ones. And I'll put this here, right? So we had a lot of to and fro and trying to set up this conversation almost 2 months back. And every now and then I'd be like, Ashish, Sunday ko kar lo na. And you're like, sorry, Sunday is daughter time.
Yeah, so second half is daughter time.
Okay. Yeah. See, so you're that planned out. So you do balance.
No, because she forces me to balance. So my daughter is 7. She's made it a point that after 4 p.m. on Sundays, I have to be at home taking her out somewhere. So
did that happen like by default, or did you kind of design that into your process?
No, I didn't. Actually, you see what used to happen is first, people who are entrepreneurs here will realize first 2-3 years you just can't balance. If you're balancing, you're reducing your chances of success anyway, right? So my daughter is exactly the same age as our business. So she was born 4 days before we started the company. Okay, so she was growing up and so was the company. So the good part of our building the company with my daughter was that when the daughter really had her senses that Papa and Mama are not around. We have 2 companies. My wife leads one, I lead the other one. So by the time she was 3, I think some of those hard years had gone away. Okay. So I was lucky that way.
You were also lucky, speaking of your wife Ruchi, you were also very lucky that way.
Yeah,
right? So you both now run a unicorn, right? The thing which put a smile to my face when I was doing research for this, right, was this, which I found on Money Control. It says, Hum do, Hamare do, right? Which is because both Ashish and his wife Ruchi have a unicorn each. Right?
So, yes, please give it up for that.
Yeah, and 2 independent companies, yes.
2 independent companies.
So, I'm going to ask you a very pointed question here again. What is the one thing that you love about working with your wife, and one thing which is a big challenge working with your spouse?
I think the one thing that I love is the fact that we are completely complementary. Whatever I'm good at, she is not so great at, and the reverse is also true. Whatever she is great at, I'm not so good at. So exactly complementary. And because we kind of, swam through the same kind of academic and professional ecosystems. We had a good understanding of the fact that we were complementary very, very early into our lives. So one is that. And I think the fact that that stands against is the fact that, see, one unicorn is tough to manage, especially if built in a short period of time. Two, it's a lot complex. So work tends to percolate to home. There is hardly a line between personal and professional lives. Everything kind of becomes professional. So, to the extent that when my daughter was 5, she knew a few jargons by herself. I'll tell you the most popular jargon. My sister, my daughter's Bua's name is Rosie. Okay, and one of the key things that I always focus on is return on capital employed, which is ROCE. So actually, my daughter calls her Bua, which is my sister, as Rosie Bua. So she's picked up so much jargon. She talks about pat, give me a pat, give me my income for the day. Whatever. If I tell her that, she has to wait for me, she'll ask me for a fees and stuff like that.
She's going to be a better investor than you for sure.
This is a very interesting conversation because you have so much of your family which is actually tied into Ofbusiness, right?
But that's the only way you can do it. If your family is not with you, you can't pull it out.
Yeah, and you still manage to. It's together, but it still has its own kind of. You said that there are no lines, but it's still balanced, isn't it?
No, see, the way to think about it is that when you want to create something big and fast, what you need to do is you need to increase your chances of success. How do you do that? There are very many things that you need to take care of, okay, which obviously does not add to your business but is important to do.
Right.
Like, let's say, taking my daughter to extracurricular classes. Somebody has to do it. If I have to start thinking about it, then what happens is it eats up into the time that I have to put into business. So to put that structure together, that somebody is taking care of it, and if it can be, let's say, a grandmother or a grandfather, it's much easier that way. To put that entire structure into place is something that one should always do. I think even before Ruchi and I started, we actually took about a year to think about how do we put a family structure together so that we could actually focus our lives, which involved us moving from Bombay to Delhi, which involved me moving my parents who were for the last, I think, 200 years in Cuttack. We uprooted them and got them to Delhi, which meant that we actually timed the kid in such a way that, that she was as old as the business, right? So we actually planned that. And we did not plan what we would do in the business. So I think planning that structure around you so that you could focus your energies on something is critical. It's critical to any pursuit, whether it's an academic pursuit or a professional pursuit or a sports pursuit. The structures around you are the ones that make you successful because it makes you focus and just do away with what is noise for your pursuit.
That is so beautifully put. One of the things that while you were speaking right now, which came to my mind was I'm a big fan of Naval Ravikant, right? The founder of AngelList, and he had said somewhere that no amount of success in the professional realm can make up for failure in the personal life.
Right.
Founders need to remember that, right? And you just embody that all the way through and through.
So we'll move on.
There's no option otherwise. See, frankly, if you don't have a supporting structure, what's going to happen is that you will spend less and less time doing what you are intending to do, and that reduces your chances of success.
Right.
And entrepreneurship, frankly, is about increasing the odds of your success. So the more you increase your odds, the better off you are.
Balance of probability.
Yep.
Right. Now, we're going to move on to the next segment and then we'll go on to some audience questions. To keep this interesting, right? We have a small pop quiz for you.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to start with the first one. The first word that comes to mind when I say money.
More money.
Okay, next.
The first word that comes to mind when I say fraud.
The first word that comes to fraud, the guy should be put in jail.
Okay, fair enough. Next. First word that comes to mind when I say fun.
Work.
First word that comes to mind when I say personal brand.
That's the last thing that should be on your mind. Like, I don't even apply for any awards. I mean, none of our people in the company, we never apply. We apply for company awards, but never for individual awards. Personal brand is the worst, according to me. Unless you're a B2C entrepreneur.
Then you need it?
You don't need
Validation.
it, but it kind of helps you in the beginning years. I think in the later years it starts hurting any which ways.
While we are on this, right, because people look at those awards for validation, but even if you are a little bit into the ecosystem or, keep your eyes open, most of those awards are kind of
Traded.
Jury awards, very, biased awards and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes.
But because we are more of a status-driven society, we always use that as an indicator of validating our this thing. What do you tell your team about those awards and how to kind of not get validation from those things?
No, I think I remember reading a quote from I think Salman Khan sometime in the early 2000s, wherein he said, I mean, he's never as smart as this quote. He said that people who actually create commercial success do not win any awards, right? And that has just really stayed with me. I tell people that the only thing that you should care about is money. And if you have time, then care about fame within the organization. And the third is crave for power, but not for fame outside, because that will spoil this equilibrium.
I don't have this over there, but power or money?
Money.
I like how he's consistent with his answers, right? Why is that? Money can buy power?
No, power will lead to money anyway, so.
Okay, fair enough.
So better go for it immediately.
All right, next question. The first word that comes to mind when I say entrepreneurship.
It's damn tough. It takes a toll on you professionally, personally, emotionally, physically. I used to be a fairly good-looking young boy about 5 years back.
You're still good looking. Yeah, you have a George Clooney look now.
Oh, yeah. Give it to like 5 years of entrepreneurship or 7 years of entrepreneurship, whatever. It significantly ages you.
But you do it all over again, right?
Oh, any day. I would do it earlier. I think I planned too much. I waited too much. I planned for 2 decades of asset build out. I would probably do it now with half a decade of asset build out. I'd probably do it before 30.
Okay.
And you did at 35.
I started at 35 years.
Next segment. Fill in the blanks. The best startup founder, in my opinion, is?
Nikhil Kamath.
Oh, that's a very good answer.
Or Nitin Kamath, whoever.
Yeah. Next. The book that left the biggest mark on me as an entrepreneur is?
Good to Great. Yeah.
Dash is my one skill without which I wouldn't have been as successful.
Sales.
Yeah, I knew this one. While we are on this topic of sales, right? And a lot of people have written about this. Even Peter Thiel was one of the first investors in Facebook. He said that the best, it's usually the sales guys who are the heroes of any company. Right. We give them fancy names like management consultant and investment banker or CEO, but they are the main heart of the business, right? And they have egos, they have ambitions. How do you hire for sales? Because you want to see that hunger, but somewhere there is overconfidence. I want to hear how you go about the process of actually hiring a sales guy.
So first of all, I don't take an experienced sales guy ever. All our sales guys are pretty much freshers or maybe 1 year into their professional journey. So that's number one. Second thing that I look for is deep hunger. You can see it when some people speak, they're like, they would spring out of their seat a little bit, but they wouldn't really jump out. They would talk about not just what their dreams are, but they will couple it with saying that how they will get there, right? So I think hunger and hustle or hunger and hard work combined together is something that you need to look for, and they will give you many signals of if they are not. Right? So that's the second thing we look for. Third thing that we look for is communication flair. कि बंदा जो है मतलब थोड़ा सा मजाकिया हो, थोड़ा सा स्टोरी बना सकता हो, थोड़ा स्ट्रक्चर में बोले 1 2 3. I mean, people can do it in very many ways, but you need to have some kind of a communication flair, right? The fourth thing that I look for right now, after having some years of experience building that, is good general knowledge. According to me, if you are poor in general knowledge, you can't break the ice. You can't engage in small talk, and without that, you can't do sales. So good general knowledge. It could be about anything. It could be about entrepreneurship. It could be about the wine being kept there. But you need to have good general knowledge. And the wider your general knowledge, the better it is. The depth doesn't really matter, right? So that's the fourth thing we look for. The fifth thing that I've slowly realized painfully is humility. Because as a sales guy, what happens is you'll get a lot of rejections. Frankly, I've been a sales guy for like close to 15 to 18 years of my life. I can tell you that 90% of what was a lead never became a convert, right? So you have to have the humility. Persistence is a different word. Humility to say that, okay, It happens to everyone. It has happened to me in the past. Life hasn't changed. Let me move on. It happens to the best of them, right? So humility.
I think you just touched upon another very important point here, which is that people are often kind of attaching themselves to just the outcome, right? And that's why we tend to take ourselves too seriously rather than actually attaching yourself to the effort of it all, right? And it is something that you have to have humility to know that sometimes the odds weren't in your favor. It wasn't you, and that is something that I think defines the best of us, right? We will move on to the next question. Dash is your path to financial freedom.
Money.
I'm gonna ask for a different answer than this one.
Okay, that is your path. Knowledge.
Okay.
This is the last one. India will be a $1 trillion economy by 2030.
I think they're saying we are probably a 3 trillion economy, and they're saying that we'll get to about 10. Is what I remember. The way to think about is I think we will grow at the rate of about 10%, especially with all the geopolitical things about. And if you are growing at the rate of 10%, then in about 8 years you double. Okay, so that makes it
happen,
6 and a half.
It won't be by 10 trillion can't be by 2030 because that will be 14%, right? So
Correct, that's 14-15%. Right. So it will be about 6 and a half trillion.
Okay. Ashish, I have one final question to close today's very insightful conversation. You're the person who's, achieved most of his moonshots at this point.
No, not at all.
So that was my next question, the closing question. What is that next big thing from Asish Mohapatra that we should all watch out for?
So I'll tell you, I have a very simple goal about this. I think the way I think about this is add a 0 to whatever you're doing, right? Maybe at a larger scale, okay, you could do it in more number of years. So if you are today 100 million of PAT, the goal is to make it a billion. If it's a billion of PAT, you make it 10 billion. So it's very simple, just add a 0. India invented the 0 any which ways, right? Now, put a time frame that may be unthinkable. Like for example, if you say today that to move from 100 million of PAT to $1 billion of PAT, we want to do it in 3 years. It sounds unbelievable, but yeah, that's our aim. Right? So it's very basic. Just add a 0, whether it's to your bank balance, whether it's to your revenue number, whether it's to your PAT number, whether it's to your net worth in total. Just add a 0. A 0 is very, very powerful.
Fair enough. I'm still going to hold your feet to the fire. What is that target? Is it $1 billion in PAT? Because then I'll have you here again when you actually achieve that number.
I would say first would be $200 million of free cash flow. Because PAT also is misleading, because your PAT could be locked into, assets that you have built out. It should be real cash flow. A business is really good if it throws out cash flow. Reliance throws out a lot of cash flow, right? Amazon throws out a lot of cash flow. Facebook throws out a lot of cash flow. So yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry. I know that I said that the previous question would be the last. This is genuinely the last. Will the common people have the Janta here? Will they have a chance to invest in Ofbusiness as a public entity in the near future?
Frankly, we have a lot of HNIs who are invested in us. Just looking at you, I can tell you that a lot of you guys are HNIs. So, in about a year.
In about a year?
Yeah, we are readying ourselves. I think we'll be ready after 6 to 7 months. So May is the general elections. We'll be ready by June, and then we'll time the market.
Awesome. We will all be looking forward to that, Ashish. Everybody, please give it up for the man of the hour, Mr. Asish Mohapatra.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
3 things we learned from our conversation with Ashish. Number 1, money does not buy happiness. It does buy motivation and an insatiable appetite for growth. Productivity and generating value for your company, your family, your society, that buys you happiness. Money just helps you keep the score. Number 2, no amount of success in the professional realm can make up for failure in your personal life. Balance while building your company is very, very hard, especially in the early days. You only find balance when you understand the importance of wide-ranging personal and professional priorities. Number 3, entrepreneurship is the hardest thing you will ever do. It will hurt, it will bring you to the brink more than once, and it's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. But despite the pain and rejection and sacrifices, most founders would do it all over again. Because there is no high better than discovering what we are truly capable of. Thank you for watching, And if you have any suggestions for whom we should bring on next, please let us know in comments. Also, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.